Good morning. Got blown in here by the wind, didn't you? I got here early, so I didn't see all the wind, but I think it's going to be about a 45-mile-an-hour gust sometime today as well. We call that in West Texas a gentle breeze. So good to have all of you. Good that you're here today. What a great day. Palm Sunday. We've continued this series. We talked about scars, and we sort of started at the end and worked our way backwards, talking about Jesus literally showing us his scars, talking about the scars on this journey. One of them is the scars of disappointment, because it's based on expectations. The higher the expectations, the greater the possibility for disappointment when they're not met. It can turn into disillusionment. There's no greater expectation than when Jesus goes into Jerusalem on what we celebrate as Palm Sunday. Let's bow our heads as we begin. God, let the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Years ago, I was serving at another church in Fort Worth, and we had a partnership with the United Community Centers, which was started by the United Methodist Church, and they were located strategically in areas of poverty and need, where kids faced great challenges of drugs, violence, a lack of resources, food shortages in some places. And so we would partner with them like a lot of other churches did, provide tutoring after school. We'd provide a food and clothing bank as well, and try to give resources. We had one person in our congregation named Holly who came up with an idea about helping them to see things they wouldn't normally see, because they're growing up in a neighborhood that tells them over and over again, you're never going to amount to much of anything. What's going to happen is that you will just grow up in a world that's going to be continually putting road obstacles in front of you. And so it began to Holly said, let's just begin to show them, let them envision. So she had groups of people that would come in, and she would take them on field trips to museums, to business leaders, teachers, doctors, first responders, took them to TCU, some other things, just to give them a vision of what might be possible if they would be willing to work and if people were going to help them, and we were part of that whole process to help them as well. Holly also came up with this wonderful idea. She wanted to put on a style show. Initially it began as a fundraiser, but it really grew to be more and more as we progressed. So we'd have the kids come in, and I can't really describe it because when I think back on it, it just really morphed into something pretty remarkable. We had the kids who were able to pick out their own music. They would walk down a runway. Before that, though, we brought in makeup and hairstylists and other people that would come in. We brought in a professional model to show them actually how to walk down a runway, how to hold themselves, and how to carry themselves as well. We sort of did this in an elaborate way to make them feel very good about themselves, but also give them a fun experience. All the clothes that they wore, they got to keep and take home with them. My job in the whole process throughout this was just before they were about to go onto the runway, we had them line up in the hallway in chairs, and I got down on my knees and we washed their feet. And we told them, and I told them in particular, that you're a beloved child of God. God has an incredible plan for your life, that if you'll keep your heart open and you keep your eyes open, God will show you the way, that we love you and God loves you, and we're so glad that you're here. And we look for marvelous things that are going to happen in your life. And we washed their feet and told them a story about Jesus doing the same. We talked about the idea that that's what we do in the church is we are servants. We're here to help other people. If it means doing like Jesus, getting on our knees and washing feet, it's a symbolic effort, and I hope it's a powerful reminder for each one of them. And I remember the style shows that we did for years and years, and it never failed. I knew what was coming, and when kids began to have the music, and you could see them come from out of the curtains, and they would walk on the runway, I just had this lump in my throat because the crowd would just go crazy, and there were family members and community members and church members, and I mean, it was packed. And every child came out of those curtains, and they just started to walk across and you could just feel the confidence and the joy, and they had never had anything like this, never experienced anything like this, and it just put a lump in my throat because I thought to myself, every child in this world needs that moment. For no other reason, not because they accomplished anything, not because they did anything extraordinary, because they are children of God, and they're our people, and we love them dearly. To be able just to hear the applause and the accolades and feel the love and the warmth in that room, it was just palpable, and you could feel it and see it. And I think every child has that moment because it's a hard world. But I also had mixed emotions because I knew, as great as that moment was, I hope as meaningful as it was, after it was over, they were going to go back to their neighborhoods. They were going to go back to poverty. They were going to go back to violence. Going to go back to gangs and all the influences. Every educator will tell you, every people or every person who's involved in ministry or social work, if you don't get a child by the age of 10 in those kinds of situations, you might lose them for the rest of their lives. And I had this mixed emotion, realizing that as much good as I think we thought we could do, they were still having to go back to those kinds of neighborhoods. And you wonder if you were doing anything good at all, or if anything really would change. Jesus proceeds into Jerusalem. He didn't have to go. He chooses to go. He's intentional about going. And it's that one day when all the crowds line and they just literally explode with hope and enthusiasm, because this is what they hope and believe is their answered prayer. This is the one who's going to come and save them, restore Israel to its prominence, to oversee the new kingdom that is coming. And he rides on the back of a donkey, and there is so much hope. And they scream at the top of their lungs, Hosanna to the highest, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And everything in that one moment embodies it. No matter whatever's going on, this is hope in its purest sense, and they see it, and they cannot contain themselves. But there's also reality that sets in. After all this, we already know what's going to happen. They're going to go back to their lives. The Romans will still be in charge. They're going to go back to being poor and marginalized. Life is going to go on. There's a really good chance that no matter how ecstatic and great this moment is, nothing significant is really going to change. So Palm Sunday is about disappointment, but it's also about expectation. Expectation of the Jesus that we want and the Jesus we need. We're very clear and confident about the Jesus we want. We want the Jesus who will come to us when we need. We want him to solve our problems, to bless what we're doing, to be there when we need him, to be available, to do whatever it is, to fill our plates, to serve our needs. That's the Jesus we all expect. It's what we hope. It's what the people who line the streets outside of Jerusalem were hoping and expecting too. But the Bible is honest enough not only to give us the Jesus we want, it also tells us this is the Jesus you need. Because this is high point of the story that he comes and everybody has expectations. He's the king. Scriptures have already told them. You look in the Old Testament prophecy. He's going to be the king who's going to overthrow the Romans. That's the expectation. That's the real hope. That's the excitement. That's what causes people to just celebrate that one incredible moment. But what do you expect that happens? I mean, after this, 5 days later, he is dead, crucified. It just unravels in a short period of time. What did you expect? You can't have somebody marching into Jerusalem in the midst of Passover when the whole population is quadrupled because of Passover. The Romans are afraid at any moment a revolt is going to take place, so they're going to stamp down anything that looks like it's either civil unrest or a revolution taking place. So they're watching Jesus, and they don't like what they see. So in 5 days, he's going to be dead. What do you expect? You can't walk into it. You can't ride into the symbolic Jerusalem and proclaim somehow that you're the king when the real king is the emperor and the real kingdom is the Roman Empire. What did you expect? I mean, if you just look at it, you cannot force that issue. I think about the courage and the bravery it takes. Jesus knows he's going into the most hostile part of his entire existence. He knows there's a good chance he'll not survive this. I was watching the other day a video from Ukraine, watching Zelensky walking through the streets knowing that there are people who are committed to killing him, but he will not leave, and he refuses to back down, and he will not hide. And the amount of courage that takes, it's hard to understand. But what did you expect, really? I mean, did you really expect he was going to go in and overthrow the Romans? If you did, you were wrong. That's not the kind of king he proclaimed to be. Because expectations are powerful things. There's a lot of relationships that just fail on expectations. I expected you to be one thing. You turned out to be not what I expected. There are expectations in business, expectations in your personal life. Even in the Methodist Church, I've seen when it falls apart, when the bishop sends somebody the congregation didn't expect. It's not anything the minister did or the congregation. It just means the gap between what was sent and what was expected was too great to overcome. At some point, the expectations are powerful, and the greater the expectation, the greater the chance for disillusionment and disappointments. You've got all these people who are cheering, but they're cheering for the wrong things. Because in that moment, Jesus is saying, I know what you want. Here's what I know that you need, and it's difference. So Jesus is saying it's time we go to Jerusalem because he knows you can't save the world from a safe address. You've got to go to Jerusalem, to the heart of everything there. And it starts out with such great hope and promise. And by Thursday, people are beginning to cry out. He's betrayed. He's arrested, tortured, crucified. So what do you expect to happen? I mean, just look at the whole reality of the story. His friends tried to talk him out of going, but he wouldn't listen. No fewer than 5 times, Jesus says over and over, I'm going to Jerusalem. That's what I feel God has called me to do. And he goes on ahead of us to show us what it means to live a life of courage and faith and conviction, because it's the hard truth, not the simple Jesus we think we need, but the real Jesus that we need. There is this Jesus that comes to us. The truth is that life is going to expose us. I don't know about you, but I feel like the older I get, the more I realize this. Life just has a way of exposing you. Whatever's inside of you trying to hide, it's going to come out eventually. In your marriage, in your relationships, in your business, what kind of person is, whatever's inside is going to come out. If you preach long enough, you're going to get exposed. Things are going to be able to be revealed. You can't hide your true self forever. You can't live in secret forever. It just gets exposed, both the good and the bad. It just happens. And our biggest fear is people are going to see the bad in us, and it's going to be too much, and we can't have a relationship, and everything will fall apart. We're just pretenders. We're really not the people we project ourselves to be. And here's the good news of the gospel is God already knows the worst in us. God already knows the best in us. And God is always seeking to bring out the best in us, acknowledging what we are capable of, but giving us the courage and the power and conviction to overcome whatever is inside of us. But it also tells us that even in the worst moments, God does some of his best work, meaning God will help you overcome that which is within us. Things we can't control, can't hide, can't keep hidden forever. He's the one we really need, not just the one we want. So I have to ask myself this question. We've seen this story forever and ever again. You ever stop to think this? Who is the parade for, actually? Who is this big celebration? Jesus goes to great detail to put it together. It's not just something at the last minute haphazard. No, he goes to great detail to arrange all things to make sure everything is in place to send a statement as he goes into Jerusalem, because everything makes a statement. And people are there, and they miss the statement being made. So who's the parade for? I don't think it's for Jesus. I don't think Jesus needs accolades, doesn't need applause. His ego doesn't need somebody telling him he's the king, because he knows who he is. So who's the parade really for? I think it's for us. I think it's for us because I think we need one moment to actually lean into and believe in that there's real hope in this world, that no matter how dark it gets, there is a light shining. That it's for us to give us hope when the world beats us down and tells us everything we cannot do, everything we are not and never will be. I think we need this story because we got to give ourselves a chance just to believe in all the things that we know, hope, pray, trust, believe that really are true. So I'm watching the news about a week and a half ago. It's a great feature on Channel 8 News. It's about this TCU basketball player named Darius Ford, and he was organizing a clothing drive for the campus and for the community. And it sounds like it's really an outstanding young man. His name is Darius Ford, and he was organizing this stuff for kids, and they interviewed him, and he was talking about how he wanted to give back to the community because he grew up in an area that had a lot of poverty, a lot of violence, a lot of gangs, drugs, and he didn't really have a good support system. He didn't have a lot of things in his life growing up, but what he had was the Bethlehem United Community Center, and he would go there every single day, and there would be tutors there, and they would help him with his schoolwork, teaching them everything he needed to do to become good in school. They gave him clothes and made sure he had food and made sure his family was taken for him. And he talked about this Bethlehem United Community Center changing his life, and that it gave him an incredible opportunity and to do the things that he really wanted to do and to believe in himself. And he went to TCU as a basketball player, but he was on a full academic scholarship, if you can believe that. I remember Darius Ford because he was one of the little kids who walked down the runway at the church that we were serving. And I remember him as a kid. And I remember that feeling of having a lump in my throat watching a kid who just hears the applause and the love in that room and everything else that was saying, you go, Darius. We love you. You're a child of God. You go lean into life because God's got a great plan for you. Prayed is not for Jesus. Prayed is for us, that we wouldn't have a shadow of a doubt that we are loved, that God has a wonderful plan for our lives if we just keep our hearts and our eyes open. Because I think every single one of us needs that one moment to tell us that whatever this world is facing, whatever we're facing or challenged with, there is a Savior who has come. There's no place you can go where God's love cannot find you. And today on Palm Sunday, here's what we say. Jesus is coming, and he is relentless, and he will not stop. He will not quit. He is coming for you. He's coming for the best in you. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord.